Hey guys, it's Christina Marie, and today's video on cruise tips and tricks is all about how to choose between two different cruises. So frequently, one cruise line will have two different cruise options that have different ports of call, but basically seem more or less the same. So how do you choose between two different cruises to take? Before diving in, I wanna send a big shout out and thank you to Catherine. She posted in one of my videos asking me to do a video about the different cruise itineraries. Not quite the same, but hopefully this video helps you choose which cruise to take with your husband. Okay, so let's jump into the 6 tips to help you choose which cruise is right for you. Okay, so the first tip is the cruise line itself. Different cruise lines are very, very different. So if you want a big party and lots of music, look at like Carnival. If you want kind of a middle of the road cruise, you might want to look at Royal Caribbean. And if you want something really relaxing, you might want to look at Holland America. So that's the first thing to consider. The second thing to look at when choosing between two different cruises is the number of sea days. So in my opinion, cruises are great in that you can relax on the ship and be fed meals and have your room cooked, your room cleaned, and it's just relaxing. But a big part of the cruise is going to different cruise ports. So the quick way to choose between two different cruises is simply choose the cruise itinerary with the fewest number of sea days. Most of the time, if it's a 7-week cruise, there will be 2 sea days. For me personally, 3 sea days is kind of a lot. So I would choose the cruise with the fewer number of sea days. Okay, tip number 3 to help you choose between two different cruises is the ship itself. So if one of the cruise line's ships was built much older than the other one, I would tend to go with the newest ship or the newer ship. Oftentimes when cruise lines remodel their ships, they're just way better. They can be bigger as well though. So I will say the exception to this rule is Royal Caribbean. Some of their new ships are huge, like humongous, and you actually might prefer an older ship that's a little bit smaller. But in general, if you're choosing between two different cruises, I'd go with the one that is on the newer ship. Okay, tip number 4 for choosing between two different cruise itineraries, this is more for the Caribbean cruises, is look at the different ports. So for me personally, all the ports are more or less kind of the same, but there are a few that stand out. So like I personally really like Grand Turk. The reason I like Grand Turk is you walk off the cruise ship and the beach is right there and it's free and you don't have to take a taxi anywhere. So for me personally, when cruising in the Caribbean, I tend to go for cruises that have a stop at Grand Turk. I'd also say, having been to Curacao, if you have a Caribbean cruise that goes there, Curacao is my favorite cruise port in the Caribbean, so I would choose that cruise. And then I've personally never have been to Aruba, but my mom says that the water there is amazing. So if you are looking at two different Caribbean cruises and one goes to Aruba, I would go to that one. Also, there's like Eastern and Western and Southern Caribbean cruises. I find that the Southern ones tend to be a little bit less touristy and a little bit more interesting in the ports of call. Also, if you were ever going to fly somewhere, it's a longer flight, so it might be kind of smart to go to the Southern Caribbean cruise when you're choosing between two different cruise itineraries. The places are just more unique. Fewer cruise lines go to the far south, so it's a little bit, that's a differentiator. And also in the winter time, if you're cruising in like December or January, the Southern Caribbean cruises are good. So Catherine, I hope that was helpful. Okay, and then 5th way to choose between two different cruise lines is the cost, of course. But a big cost of getting to the cruise is airfare. So if you are looking at different times to cruise, you might want to look at how much the airline tickets cost for those different dates. And tip, if you are flying from up north to a cruise in the Caribbean, I would highly recommend you fly the day ahead of time, just in case your luggage gets lost or it snows and your flight's canceled, or airlines have been having lots of issues. So little tip, when looking at the airfare for your flight, if you're up north, you need to get down to the cruise ship a day ahead of time to be safe. Okay, and then the sixth tip to choose between two different cruises is to look at the length of the cruise itself. For me personally, like five or 3 days is just really short. I find that 1 week is the sweet spot for a cruise. The first day is kind of orientation and getting on the ship always, and the last day is kind of always like a downer because you're leaving. So a week gives you enough time to really enjoy the cruise. I think 3 days is kind of short, and this is just me personally, but 10 days is kind of long. I'm ready to get home from a 10-day cruise. So to wrap it up, here are my tips on how to choose between two different cruises, specifically to help you choose between two different Caribbean cruises for your next vacation. 1 is look at the cruise line itself. 2 is choose the cruise itinerary with the fewest number of sea days. 3 is look at the cruise ship itself. Choose the newer ship generally. Tip number 4 is look at the ports of call. I personally love Grand Turk, Curacao, and Aruba, and think the Southern Caribbean is really cool if you can do that one. 5 is look at the cost of your airfare, and 6 is look at the length of the cruise itself. If you thought this video was helpful, please subscribe below. It makes my day. I get a notification and I love it. Please give me 2 thumbs up, or I guess with YouTube, it's just 1 thumb up, and leave a comment below. I would love to hear about your favorite cruise port in the Caribbean, because there's so many options. I would love to hear in the comments what your number 1 pick would be. Thanks, guys.